Hey everybody on YouTube. So with Christmas now behind us, I've been able to get back to making some reviews, and I just picked up a game called Sir, You Are Being Hunted, and here's my full review. Sir, You Are Being Hunted is an open-world survival game that was released in May 2014 for Windows PC, Mac OS X, and Linux. The game was partially funded through Kickstarter and was developed by the company Big Robot. In the game, you play as a stranded man or woman who's being hunted by robots dressed as Victorian-era gentlemen. First off, the design of the NPC robots and creatures in the game are great. There are several different types of hunters and a few special NPCs, and they all have a cool aesthetic. The main enemies are Victorian-era English hunters who happen to be robots. The game's characters and items have a bit of a steampunk thing going on, and it's well done without being too campy. An example of this would be the strange scanner. I have to give the game points for its humor. The general character design, the British narrator, and the English gentleman robots are all really fun, without taking away from the horror aspect of the game. Funny little jokes like the patriotic crockery items, the tooltip descriptions, and the town names are all good additions. I'll always say gameplay trumps graphics, but in this case they're just dull. The textures are low quality and the foliage is a jaggy mess. The lighting is okay, but the game just looks like it was made in the early 2000s. The environmental art is nothing special, and it doesn't seem to vary much island to island, except for its overall hue. When World of Warcraft came out, it was a low poly and low detail game, but it had style. A game like Stranded Deep doesn't have a lot of style, but it has a lot of fidelity. This game doesn't have an interesting environmental style, and it has low fidelity, making it pretty unappealing. That might sound brutal, but you do a lot of walking in this game, and the graphics didn't help pull me in. The sound of the game is definitely stronger than the graphics. The design is pretty minimal, there isn't a lot of music or unique sound effects, but what the game has fits the atmosphere. The horror aspect of the game really comes from the audio. Just the sound of nearby hunters is enough to get my heart racing. I can't describe it, but the way the robot scanners sound as you get closer really puts some fear into me. And once guns are shot or you're spotted, the game sometimes starts a bass drum beat in the background that sounds like a racing heartbeat. And that really adds to the tension. Though this game is not advertised as a horror game, elements like these really make it play like one. I also have to point out this game's performance was less than impressive. I have a GTX 960, which isn't incredible, but considering how this game looks, it should do just fine. I couldn't manage full settings at 1080p. The game runs on the Unity game engine, and I imagine the extensive use of foliage is the reason the game has performance issues. I wouldn't give the game's graphics as hard of a time if they were better optimized, but considering The Witcher 3 has had a more stable frame rate on my computer, I can't ignore the poor optimization. The main goal of Sir, You Are Being Hunted is to escape the islands you have been stranded on. At the beginning of the game, you can choose the biome of each of the 5 islands, and then the game procedurally generates the land, making each time you play the game different. However, this will mostly just change the height map of the zone and what buildings it puts down. The game has a bad tendency to tell you nothing about how to play the game, and the world creation is where it starts. It's cool that you can pick the world you want to play and what biomes each island has, but if you haven't played the game, you won't know what any of it means. To keep this review short, I'll just say the tutorial system sucks. I almost stopped playing very early on because I was frustrated from knowing absolutely nothing. Sadly, if you want to play this game, brushing up on the wiki or watching a Let's Play beforehand is almost necessary to avoid these early frustrations. The way to beat the game is to find 17 pieces of the device, which was destroyed when you accidentally traveled to the islands. Once you find a piece, you'll need to return it to the Standing Stones, the location where you started the game. After you find all 17 pieces, you'll escape the islands. Each island besides the first has 3 fragments, and most fragments are guarded by at least 2 hunters. You travel to each island via 4 boat docks around the first island. The boat docks in the Standing Stones are also the only locations the game can be saved. The mechanics of the game are pretty simple. You have a health stat and a vitality stat. Health is self-explanatory. Vitality is just a sort of combined survival stat. Your vitality stat degrades over time, and you need to keep it above 0 by finding food or drinks. You can also cook food if you find raw meat, matches, and a campfire, but this will draw attention to you, so I generally depended on scavenging houses. If you're shot or wounded, you will lose health and can start bleeding. In that case, you'll need to bandage yourself or you'll bleed to death, making rags one of the most valuable items in the game. If you keep your vitality above 50 points, you regenerate health. How do I know that? I looked it up because the game doesn't tell you. The sneak mechanic of the game works well and is easy to understand. If you are visible, an eye will appear in the circle. As you become more visible, rings will appear around the circle. Running and moving make you more visible, and moving in daylight makes you easier to detect. The tension of the game rides entirely on this feature. Generally, shooting guns is a last resort or a carefully planned event, considering gunshots will bring robots from all around. The game forces you to wait for opportune moments to take the fragments back, making each time you do it successfully pretty fulfilling. But failing is equally frustrating, considering the lack of save points. The game features several equipable weapons and items such as a rifle, binoculars, a scanner to help locate the device fragments, and alarm clocks you can use as time distractions. The inventory screen is the sort of Tetris-like inventory in games like Diablo 2. You need to keep enough space open to hold the device fragments, but also need to make space for your essentials. I like this element as it made inventory management important to survival. Picking which items to keep added some good depth to the game. When I first started, I hoarded guns, but once I saw how rare ammo was and how much space they took up, I just kept my revolver and rifle, and that was probably overkill. The 5 islands in the game are pretty large, and with only one save point on most islands, the game just becomes tedious. Essentially, I would have to make a run into town to find vitality items and locate the fragments. Then I would have to run back and save. Then I would go attempt to take a fragment back. And that's the way the game works. You rinse and repeat this process until you get all 17 fragments. And though I eventually started enjoying the game, I could never quite shake the feeling that I could be playing something else. The moments of tension in the game are sometimes few and far between, and though that means each of these moments really grips your attention, it also leads to the game being kind of boring. I only beat the game to complete this review. The game does feature multiplayer, and that could certainly add a fun element to the game that's missing in single player. I really enjoy survival games, and this gets a lot of those elements right. The simplistic sneak system and survival stats gets the mechanics out of the way and makes the gameplay about skill, not overly complicated stat systems. The horror of running for your life or being surrounded by hunters is awesome. Most horror games don't give you the chance to make opportunities, and this game does. I saved myself a few times, and getting away with a fragment after an exciting chase was a great feeling.
I would advocate discretion, sir. It might be best to run and hide, but if you have found a weapon, perhaps you can use it to fend them off.
With these elements, the game has so much potential, but it just doesn't do quite enough to make me come back to it. And that's too bad, because I really enjoy the concept. Sir, You Are Being Hunted is a game of big ideas and solid mechanics, but with poor execution. Progressing in the game simply takes too long. If the game was half the size, it may have worked for me, but the time investment for what you get back is just unbalanced. The NPC design is great, but the overall look of the game is lacking. The game fails to take true advantage of the Unity game engine and lacks enough style to make up for it. By no means would I say this is a bad game, but it feels unfinished and unpolished. I can see the appeal for some people in its slow, stealth gameplay, and I bet multiplayer with the right person would be really fun. I personally wouldn't recommend this title, but I can see why it's found a niche. Okay everybody, that was my video for this week. I hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, I think you know what to do. Leave me a comment in the comments section and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this one. So just as a quick channel update, I just want to let you guys know I did get a new camera. It's in the mail, should be here soon, so I won't have to use my cell phone anymore. And with that, I'll be able to do maybe some more hardware reviews. I haven't done one yet, so I just got a Wii U also, so that might be fun to do a little hardware review. And I'm also working on a review of The Witcher 3. It's taking me a little longer than expected because The Witcher 3 is a huge game, but I do have that coming soon. So hopefully you check it out.